One of the best-selling sailboats of the last 10 years was the Sun Odyssey 349, with over 2,500 of them built in that time. But now they've replaced it with something that's ignoring a lot of the rules about sailboats. Better or worse? Let's have a look. This is the Jeanneau 350, and it's built in the wake of the wildly successful 349. And there's a couple very key things that we need to talk about. Of course, stepping onto the back, we have the fold-down transom for swimming or loading in and out of the dinghy, which is kind of industry standard now. But here's the first big change. These side decks. If you're back behind the wheel, you can effortlessly and without any stairs get onto the side deck and walk forward. This means that from your helm seat, not only do you have full control of the sheet winches, the engine controls, and clutches, but you can walk up either side deck without having to navigate any stairs or navigate through all the people you might be sailing with. The guests can sit comfortable in the massive cockpit and never be in the way of the person or people sailing the boat. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I love taking people sailing, especially people that have never been on a sailboat. But I think the biggest problem for me, being the one operating the boat with 3 or 4 newbies on board, is getting around them to actually sail the boat. They clog up the cockpit and they tend to stand right in the way of everything. And then when you go to step over them, they flinch and then they move and get more in the way. I'm always climbing over them. And if I was 20 years older, I probably wouldn't be able to do that anymore. This boat solves that problem, and to my knowledge, it's the only one that does. From either helm, I can easily walk up either side deck and control every single sail line I have on board. I can anchor or dock the boat or even pick up a mooring and never step or trip over anyone in my way. There's such a healthy demarcation between the people enjoying the sail and the people doing the actual sailing that I think this will be a game changer, and I'd bet we start seeing it as an option on other boats in the coming years. The downside? I suppose if I were to really screw up and lay this boat down on a broach, the side decks might fill up with water and cause a big problem, but Jeanneau says they have, and the water will drain out the transom as fast as the boat rights itself, so hopefully we'll never have to find out. We shouldn't be broaching a 34-foot, 13,000-pound cruising boat anyway, right? The next huge game changer is something I'm actually not so sure about, and a lot of boats are going this way now. Instead of steel sail tracks on the side deck for the jib, they're using Dyneema and low friction rings for everything. You'll find these low friction rings all over this boat with soft shackles made from that high-tech rope line. On the side deck in this shot, you can see the jib sheets coming aft over the coach top and through a low friction ring. In the racing world, we'd call this a tweaker, but suffice it to say the low friction ring can be adjusted on 2 different planes. It can be pulled in and out and up and down with this line going across the coach top and then led aft to the cockpit. What this means is we get infinitely more control of our sheeting angles for the headsail than a traditional jib track would allow for. It's also much easier for Jeanneau to build it, and it means less holes in the boat. How many bolts do you have holding down your jib tracks? It's a lot. Low friction rings are all the rage in the racing world, and it's nice to see racing technology trickle down to the cruising world, but I might have some objections. First, this is harder to learn how to use. Mom and pop cruiser are usually looking for ease of use and reliability in their sailing systems, and nothing is easier to use and more reliable than a steel jib track. With a jib track, you can also replicate settings that you know to be good. For example, I know that when I'm pointed high into the wind, I should move the jib car on my boat to the second last hole on the track. I just know that. It's harder to make known good settings work again with a tweaker ring low friction system. I also know that because I race on an Olsen 30 with low friction rings everywhere. As someone who likes to dial in my sail trim to the nth degree trimming to probably the second decimal place on the knot meter, I like low friction rings and what I call tweakers. I'll keep playing with the settings all day long, but mom and pop cruiser may not want to do all that. I think they just set the jib car to the second last hole and go back to relaxing. We also note that the main sheet system on this boat is a bridle that a lot of boats are adopting. No main sheet track and traveler to get in the way of the companionway access hatch. But the trade-off is a bit less mainsail control. It's interesting that we're sacrificing mainsail control in the name of comfort for the mainsail, but on the headsail we're sacrificing ease of use for more control. Jeanneau is doing something nice with the chain plates here too, and bolting them to the outside of the hull. Over the years and decades, this allows us to keep an eye on the chain plates, keep them clean, and inspect them at regular intervals. And if they ever have to be replaced, you can likely do it yourself with minimal effort. Headed up to the bow, we have the sprit that we note is a proper single anchor roller on this boat. And inside the anchor locker, we get a provision to hook up a baby stay. So this boat, with the right options, will support a smaller headstay to run a storm jib, which is a very nice touch. It's on a Dyneema soft shackle too, so there's no hard points to rattle around. Spinning around, we note the double spreader fractional rig standing at 52 feet with swept back spreaders and intermediate stays in between. The spreaders are swept back like this because there's no backstay on this boat. They've also moved the mast back to give us more jib and less mainsail like we used to do. This makes sense because people often like to just roll out the headsail and forgo the use of the main unless they really need it. The main's harder to deal with. Making the headsail bigger makes our laziness a bit more viable, and we like that. But the lack of a backstay will be making the cockpit more roomy, but it means less physical structure holding the mast up, which is also deck stepped, and less adjustability in the rig, as well as much more complication in the rig if you ever plan to take it up and down by yourself, and it's harder to tune it properly. Not a boat I'd want to be caught out in the ocean in a big gale on, but that's not what it's designed for, is it? Headed inside, we note Jeanneau's rebellious streak again here. They've pushed the settees right out to the hull side, so there's no storage behind the seats, but that means a much wider space inside and allows for a centerline fold-out table and much more seating. Interesting choice, and it will be better for entertaining at the loss of that storage. This boat comes in multiple models with different layouts, but this showboat is a galley to starboard with a fairly healthy sized aft cabin behind it. The interior space is bright with lots of port lights, more than the 349 had, but the woodwork feels about as veneer as it gets on sailboats today. Headed up front, we get a double door to the V-berth, which is of good size and totally usable for a couple, but it's not the private suite that you'd expect on a little bit bigger boats. Keeping in mind that it's just a 34, they do make pretty good use of space in here. The boat has the option of a nav desk, but this one is not fitted with it, and instead they've put the switchgear up on the wall on the port side in front of the head. The boat comes with a Yanmar, and surprisingly, it's not a sail drive, it's shaft driven, and comes with multiple keel options, including a shoal version fin with wings, a high performance version, and even a swing keel version for super shallow water. The twin helms are paired with twin rudders to keep it grippy when it's on a heel, but because of the loss of slow speed maneuvering from twin rudders, it also comes with a bow thruster. There's a lot to like about this boat, and it'll do a great job at being a sailboat for a lot of different people in different situations. While it's not a full-on coastal cruiser, it will make for a nice weekender or pleasure craft. The changes here with the low friction rings and sloping side decks are very interesting. I love the sloping side deck myself. I think it's wonderful, but I'm not 100% sold on the lack of jib tracks. What do you guys think about this new boat? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you next time.